Welcome everybody in. I'm John Leiberman. We have a very special presentation for you tonight. I want to welcome in the viewers from Google+. I want to welcome in the viewers on YouTube. I want to welcome in those from everyjoe.com. And of course, Derek VanLuchene from Ryan United. They do so much for victims of violent crime. He's here with us tonight. This is streaming on his website. Hello, Derek.
Hey, how are you, John? It's good to be with you.
It's great to see you, and of course, it is so great to see Denise. Denise Brown, of course, her sister was murdered 20 years ago, and she's joining us tonight to talk about domestic violence, talk about some things that she's working on. Denise, I want to start with this. First of all, great to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And I want to start with this. In the past 20 years, how has your view changed about your sister's murder? Of course, we can remind the audience, O.J. Simpson acquitted in your sister's murder. How has your view changed over the past 20 years?
It hasn't. My view has not changed from the get-go. You know, I've always had my opinion, and I know that everybody's got their own opinion, and I'm not going to say, okay, mine is the right opinion for anybody, but I truly believed, and this is what I said from the very beginning. I think he murdered my sister, and he got away with it. And, you know, that's just the way it is. I mean, that's what I believe, and I haven't changed. That hasn't changed.
Now, how have you changed personally since the murder of your sister? How did the murder change you?
Oh, I've changed tremendously, John. I think it was probably at the very beginning, there was so much anger, and that anger built up more and more and more. And then finally, I got to the point where people would look at me and they would say, God, Denise, what is the matter with you? You are so angry all the time. It's like, you need to do something to take care of this. And, you know, I tried and I tried and I did whatever I could, whatever it took. And then finally, one day, a woman told me, and this was almost 14 years after my sister's murder, a woman told me, she says, you know, Denise, people aren't evil when they're born. And that kind of did something to me. That kind of, you know, no child is born evil. No child is born an abuser. No child is born, you know, a serial killer. Unless, you know, I mean, I guess there are certain instances when there's like a mental illness or something like that involved. But people in general aren't born evil. And so I think that kind of did something in my brain that it kind of clicked. It kind of resonated with me where, oh, okay. And then from that point on, I was able to chip away. It was like peeling that onion and peel away at that onion and get rid of the anger and just keep peeling and peeling and peeling. And it took a lot of years. And 20 years later, I mean, yeah, I have that anger under control. I smile a lot more. But it can flare up at any given moment. So I'm not saying it's all completely gone and I've totally forgotten. No. It doesn't work that way, but I've been able to manage it and I've been able to control it, and you know, I live my life and I'm very happy now.
And Denise, you told me when we spoke on the phone, I believe you told me that you don't even utter the name O.J. Simpson. You don't watch any of the coverage. You didn't watch any of the 20-year anniversary coverage. You don't even utter that name.
No, and you know, I've been asked right now there's the 20th anniversary of his acquittal coming up, and I've been asked to do so many interviews and so many things, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I would have done these interviews, I would have done them on my sister's murder. I think I did 2, and that's it. And now, why would I do something on his acquittal if I didn't do it on her anniversary? I mean, this for me is about Nicole. This is not about an acquittal. This is not about the trial of the century. Now I'm starting a project with a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, Jimmy James. We've got a working title, Heart and Soul Food Project, the movie and the documentary, and that's what I'm going to focus on, and that's going to be the fun times and the happy times and the, you know, the good work that we've been doing. And Jimmy James, you know, his family is a musical family. It's all about music and life and, you know, yeah, tragedy, because I mean my sister was murdered, but you know, we're not going to go into all the trial and all that stuff that everybody and their mother and brother and everybody's going to be doing. I just can't go there. So I'm declining all interviews as far as any of that stuff goes. I want to work on my project. You can go there at denisebrown.com. I've got a link to it there. And you know,
We have a link to the Kickstarter campaign right here that people can click on. They can go to it. Derek, I want to ask you this. Having dealt with so many victims and their families of violent crime, what do you make of the fact that now Denise, all these years later, is coming out and saying, look, I'm going to tell this story my way, and here's how I'm going to do it?
Right. You know, I just have so much respect for her and the way she's going about this. My brother was murdered. I understand as a sibling what a spiderweb effect that has, not only on a family but a community. But we don't utter the words of the guy that killed my brother. We don't say his name. We every day try and help crime victims, and that's where Denise is. She, in her sister's name, is helping all these people. So I just think it's the healthiest way to go about it, to not carry that anger and to do something about it, to further that mission and Nicole's name.
You know, Derek, even when I go out and speak, to both of you, to all of you, when I go out to speak, the most powerful thing people come up to me and say afterwards, they say, you know, Denise, this is really interesting because you didn't say his name not once. I said, but this is not about him. Don't you understand? This is about helping victims. This is about educating communities. This is about helping people. This is more about, you know, teaching people what they can do, like the Hands Are Not for Hitting program, which is a wonderful little program for kids, kindergarten through 6th grade. I love it because a child places their hand on a piece of paper, they trace the outline of it, they take a pledge. Hands are not for hitting, words are not for hurting, my hand will not commit violence. It's that simple. Kids remember it. It's like, let's talk about the positive things and solutions that we can do as opposed to them. You know, it's like, oh, go away.
Yeah, and to that end, I mean, my understanding is your Kickstarter is going to last 55 days, commemorating the fact that your sister would be 55. What do you think you would say to her right now if she were listening? What would you say to your sister?
First of all, I would tell her I love her because I haven't been able to say that in 20 years, almost 21 years now. I would tell her I love her. I would just give her the biggest hug in the whole world. I would, you know, we were two little Indians growing up together. We were less than 2 years apart in age. You know, we were like this. I mean, tight, tight, tight. So growing up like that and not being able to talk to her anymore, to pick up the phone and say, hey, Nick, what's going on? Not to be able to tell her I love her, not to be able to go have lunch with her, sit down, how's your day, what's going on, that kills me. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff. I mean, just like, oh, I just can't even, I don't like going there because I sit there and then I think, okay, well, I can talk to her just here. Because I know she's with me all the time and she keeps me going. She keeps me continuing the work. I mean, God, John, Derek, there's been umpteen times when I felt like, oh, God, I just want to stop. I just want to quit. Because honestly, it wasn't easy sometimes, you know, because people have their opinions. People have their ways of thinking. And Denise was the bad guy for a long time. And I could have given up and I could have stopped. But, you know, God, and I almost did. And one lady in Tennessee, she was a coalition director. She told me, she says, Denise, that was after the acquittal. She says, Denise, she goes, seeing you here and continuing the fight makes us continue. Because if you would have stopped, a lot of people would have just gone, hey, so be it. Nothing's going to change. A lot of women and children left the shelters. There was one huge shelter in Texas. They left and they went back to their abusive husbands or partners because they said, if he can get away with it, so can my husband or partner. And it was just the way it was. I mean, there was a lot of times where I just thought, wow, why am I doing this again? And then I would meet the women in a shelter and I see these little faces and I just, God, they just break your heart. And you know what? That is why I continue. And that's why I just keep going and going and going. I feel like a little Energizer bunny. Right, Eric?
Yeah,
We just keep
exactly.
going.
I know sometimes it's hard, sometimes you run up, against a wall and you really think, how am I gonna keep going? But then all of a sudden something presents itself that you say, that's why I'm here, that's why I'm doing what I do, and I feel it some days too, but that's it's so admirable that you've chosen just to step forward, go on, and for so many victims out there that are facing this. I mean, it's now just coming to light, the NFL things that are going on and all that. I mean, it's really, there's so many victims out there.
Yeah, and we're going to talk NFL in just 1 second, but Denise, let me ask you, we have a viewer question. Are you in touch with Ron's family at all? One of our viewers is asking.
No, I'm not. No, I kind of made that split, and it was unfortunate. It was really sad. I made that split away from them after they published the book, If I Did It. And, we were on the same page for a long time, and until then, I didn't understand it. I couldn't deal with it. I just thought, how could they do something like that when we've been fighting to stop this from happening? And then all of a sudden they did it, and I know the court said you had to do this and you had to do that. I would have published maybe one book. I would have kept it for myself, and that would have been it. I just couldn't go there. I couldn't do it. It was, for me, it was like a stab in the back, actually.
Denise, do you believe in justice?
Do I believe in justice? That's a great question, because I have been seeing more and more and more people getting away with a lot of stuff. I do believe in karma. I do believe that something will come back and bite you in your behind. I do believe that there's a higher power, that he will be, Judgment Day will come, absolutely. I think that's what's gotten me through a lot of this. I do believe that I will see my sister again, and that's how I continue. And if I were to be one of those type of people that would say, I don't believe, and just to sit there and think, wow, I'm never going to see my sister again, I don't know if I could handle that.
Yeah.
So I do believe that there will be justice in the end. I do believe that karma will come back, and yeah, I believe.
And Derek, I know you can relate to that, of course, having your brother brutally raped and murdered as a little boy. So I know you can definitely relate to the feelings that Denise is having, or has been having for many years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was in law enforcement for over 18 years too, and that brings to light every victim that I helped, and I do believe that there is justice, and that's what we fight for every day for victims, and justice means different things to different people. So what we do is try and figure out what justice means to those victims, and try and bring as much as we can, and same as Denise and what she's doing, helping those victims find that.
Denise, I'm curious to get your thoughts. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering what you both thought about the Ferguson verdict and all the protests and everything. Because we're talking about violence, we're talking about a murder, we're talking about a death, and we're talking about all these, that like the chokehold, the other person that got choked, and there's victims like all over the place. And then I sit there and I think, wow, and then all the people protesting and looting and all of that. How do you guys feel about that being men?
Derek, I'll let you start.
Yeah, honestly, I think that that there needs to be everybody needs to take a look at what law enforcement does. In my career, I was a patrolman, and then I went on to be an investigator, and I actually investigated officer-involved shootings, and so those things need to be looked at. We need to look at what police do, but we also need to do it in a sensible way. We're not inciting violence and riots and things like that on the street. That doesn't produce anything other than bad results. So we do need to look at some things.
I just remember back in the day with Rodney King, and they were doing they did the riots in Los Angeles as well. And I just think, God, we're sitting here trying to avoid violence. We're trying to stop violence. We're trying to say, hey, zero tolerance. and then look at those people and how they behave. It's like, how do you educate them? What can we do, and what can we continue to do to educate these people that are running crazy on the streets, burning down, businesses, offices, homes, all that? I mean, that's violence too,
Well,
I mean, it's like,
and Denise, to your point, some in the media have tried to make parallels between the O.J. verdict and then the two cases that you referenced, what happened in Ferguson with Michael Brown and Officer Wilson, and then what happened here in New York with Mr. Garner and the officer here. I'm curious to get your take on the parallels that the media has tried to draw there.
I don't understand why they always bring up the different trials and try to make them so similar. It's like, wait a minute, each one of these instances is its own identity. They're violent crimes, yes. All of them. That's the only parallel I think they have in common, is that they are violent crimes. I think that, if we would have got a different verdict on the trial, yeah, there would have been rioting in Los Angeles again, and that's why we had the verdict that we had. I mean, I could go into like talking days about that, but I just think that if we're going to educate people and we're going to have, say, a zero tolerance just for domestic violence, I think there just needs to be a zero tolerance overall, across the board. Violence is just not acceptable, and people are hurting themselves. They're hurting their own communities. It's like, where is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, and to your point, Denise, I want to ask you this. I sit on the board of the National Domestic Violence Registry, and I've spoken to so many women who have been victims of domestic abuse, and when they see what's been unfolding in the NFL, there's two things they say to me. Number one, it's not just the NFL. Why are people only talking about the NFL? It's many other organizations as well. And then number two, they say, what took so long? So I guess one question for you is, do you believe, had the NFL been more actively involved when your sister was murdered, do you think it would have made any difference? In other words, do you think they should have known something?
Well, I think they do know. Nobody can tell me that nobody knows. A friend of mine who is also a spokesperson for domestic violence and sexual assault, he says, Denise, there are 48 team members. If two of those team members are doing something bad, molesting somebody, sexually assaulting somebody, beating somebody, the 48 other members of that team should stand up and do something about it. For them not to do anything about it, a lot of those people, they sit there and they brag, and they've got their little peacock feathers up in a ruffle or whatever it's called, and a lot of times they talk about it because it's like, when like young kids, they sit there and they go, oh yeah, my girlfriend, she didn't listen to me, so I threw her up against the wall. It's like, wait a minute, those other boys that are there talking to them, just like those other teammates that are there talking to them and that are listening to them, they need to be the ones that say, hey, whatever they call each other, it's not acceptable. Yes, I think that if they would have done something 20 years ago, just like with the domestic violence movement right now, Nicole was murdered, the National 24-Hour Domestic Violence Hotline was formed. The Violence Against Women Act was formed. I went to Washington, D.C. Joe Biden, our now Vice President Joe Biden, he was then a senator. Him and Orrin Hatch, Senator Orrin Hatch from Utah, they co-authored the Violence Against Women Act. They brought me to Washington, D.C. All of that for police officers to be able to do what they do today was 20 years ago in the Violence Against Women Act. The 24-hour hotline, 20 years ago. Violence Against Women Act. So there are things that could have been done 20 years ago, especially with a football player who was so loved by so many, and could have been done. Absolutely.
Right. And Denise, let me ask you this: when you see Janae Rice, for example, standing by Ray Rice, her now they're married, they were engaged when the incident happened. What goes through your mind?
Well, one thing is I've met many Janae Rices, many. I have been to pretty much every shelter around our country. I have tried to visit every shelter every time I go and speak. I've seen many, many, many women that blame themselves for not keeping their mouths shut. For if they could have done something differently. If they could have done something, it could have changed the outcome. Maybe I wouldn't have been beat up. You know, I've seen the talk. I've heard the talk many, many times. So for me to hear it from her, it was not something that surprised me. Because now my only hope is that she does not end up like Nicole. And I tell people this, they go, well, why do you go to such extremes? I said, well, that is the extreme. That is the ultimate form of domestic violence, isn't it? The ultimate form of violence is murder. And so my only hope is that, you know, that those two can actually figure it out and be together and nothing else will ever happen. That is like my biggest hope. My biggest fear is that she's going to end up dead.
Right.
And I want to remind the audience just quickly, and we have to wrap up here in a moment, but I want to remind the audience there's a link to Denise's Kickstarter campaign on the screen. Take a look at that. It's the documentary she's working on with her partner. A link to Ryan United for victims of crime. That's on the screen as well with Derek. Denise, let me ask you this. When the documentary is completed and people watch it, what do you hope they walk away with?
I think an understanding and not such a, you know, everybody's got their views of how the media portrayed things, and honestly, we've never really spoken out. I mean, I tell little stories here and there about Nicole and my relationship with Nicole, and, you know, but there's never been anything that has actually told a story about who Nicole was, and, you know, like her life, and that's what I want to have people see. I want to have people realize that, you know what, my father was an awesome provider. My father was a hell of a father who provided for his family way before that man came into our life. And, you know, that our lives were really wonderful growing up. Well, my father's deceased now. He passed away this past July. But, you know, both of my parents were always there for us. My father, he was a military man, and he was a lot stricter, of course. And that's where I'm kind of grateful, because I got that. I got that from him as well. I got that kind of a stricter upbringing. My mother was a little bit more lax. She was like our friend, but you know, my father was there. So it was a good balance between the two of, you know, being brought up. My mother is German. My father's American. So, you know, I mean, there was the cultural side of the being German. The kissing on the cheek, hi, you know, shaking somebody's hand, always looking at somebody, always shaking their hand. Didn't have to kiss people on both cheeks, but you always had to shake their hand. There was always manners. There was always that different side of what I see nowadays from a lot of kids that are growing up these days. So we were brought up a lot differently.
Denise, what keeps you up at night in terms of, you know, your sister, the case, you know?
The case doesn't keep me up. The case does not keep me up. That's over. With my sister, it doesn't keep me up anymore. Because I know she's with me. I believe that she's with me always, and she's guiding me, and she's helping me, and I think she truly thinks that whatever I do, because I'm never there to hurt anybody. I'm not ever there doing anything maliciously. I want to try to help. I want to try to educate. I want to try to, you know, have people see things in a different perspective as opposed to just that one view. And, you know, if I can do that, and if I can accomplish that with the documentary and movie, I'm happy. I'm really happy. There's going to be a lot of entertainment. There's going to be a lot of music. That's what our life was all about. Jimmy James, his family, they're all about music. And that's what I want people to get out of it. It's the fun, happy life that we led. And, you know, I mean, I think that if I can do that, then I've accomplished my goal.
Absolutely. Denise, would you be fearful if Mr. Simpson ever got out of jail on his appeal?
No, I don't have anything to be fearful for. I mean, why? You know, I don't know. I'm not afraid. I'm not really. I grew up in. I mean, I spent a lot of years in New York. New York toughened me up. You know, I just there's nothing to be afraid of. I just know that, you know, if nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
I'm not afraid.
And Derek, I'm going to give you the final word, sir.
Well, I really appreciate Denise coming on. I think, you know, what she does for victims every day, and just following her and the things I've seen that she's done is just amazing. And of course, I can relate to a lot of stuff that she does and she goes through. But I just want to encourage people to go to her site, to check out her new project, and to really you know, honor Nicole. You can help her out by honoring Nicole and seeing what she's doing.
Denise, if there's a woman out there watching this, and they are in an abusive relationship, and as so many of them are, they are scared to leave, scared to death to leave, what do you say to them?
I usually say, if they hit you once, they will hit you again, and if they ever threaten to kill you, eventually one day they will.
Right.
So call the 24-hour domestic violence hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-SAFE. It'll be the best call you ever make. Keep yourself safe.
Denise Brown, we want to thank you so much for joining us again. Denise is working on her new documentary. There's a Kickstarter campaign. There's a link on the screen. Please click on it. Check it out. And I think, Denise, you wrote in there that if every person who paid attention to the verdict, something to this effect, if every person who paid attention to the verdict gave $1, yeah, what did you write?
If every person who was affected by the trial of the century and they donated $1, we could have a documentary, we could have a movie, and we could probably fund another 24-hour domestic violence hotline. We could have a lot of programs out there because I know millions of people were affected. I think that we could do a lot of good if everybody would give $1. If they were affected by it, $1, that's
Absolutely.
it.
Yep.
Yeah. And anybody, thank you in advance. If you even think or consider donating, just know that if we don't reach our goal, we do not get the money. And I want people to know that too, because I don't want people to think that, you know, we're just going to be taking it and taking it. But if we don't reach our goal and for some reason we are at $299.99.99, we don't get it. So I just want people to know that too.
Well, Denise, we'll check back with you for sure to check on the progress. And Derek, great to see you. Your organization, Ryan United, changes so many lives and helps so many victims of violent crime. And, of course, Denise helping so many victims of domestic violence. And I also want to thank our friends, of course, at Google Plus and at YouTube and the website everyjoe.com where this is streaming. Please share this video. It's important that people hear what Denise has to say, see the project she's working on, because God knows how many people know the name O.J. Simpson and the verdict and the trial of the century and all of that. So people should also be able to hear what Denise has to say in the memory of her sister, who would be 55 years old. So thank you again, Denise. Thank you, Ryan, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Denise. Thank you.